Forget everything you think you know about late-night television. Before viral clips, before digital feeds, before the endless scroll, there was a velvet curtain, a desk, a mug, and a man who was, quite simply, the king. For 30 glorious years, 4 nights a week, Johnny Carson didn't just host a show. He held court over American culture. He was the anchor, the straight man, the masterful listener with the perfect timing. But the magic wasn't just in Johnny. It was in the incandescent stars he welcomed to his couch. They weren't just guests. They were the gold standard of comedy, the legends who could genuinely make the famously reserved Carson break character and explode with laughter. Tonight, we're not just looking back. We're pulling back the curtain on the deepest, most cherished, and most genuinely hilarious relationships The Tonight Show ever fostered. We're talking about the guests who could walk onto the set and instantly turn the show into pure, unscripted chaos, the kind of chaos Johnny lived for. We celebrate the legends whose mere presence guaranteed television gold. Get ready to meet the few, the proud, the absolutely hysterical guests that Johnny Carson loved the most. Settle in, grab your beverage, because the show is about to begin. And our first spotlight shines on the Sultan of Snark, the Merchant of Menace, the man who dared to insult the king. Actor 1. Don Rickles. Look at this. Look at this, folks. They bring me back for a tribute. And what do they give me? A character count. I'm Don Rickles, for God's sake. You think I need a word limit? I talk until your ears bleed. And they're celebrating Johnny Carson. My pal Johnny. The king of late night. Oh, he loved me. Why wouldn't he? I was the only guy on earth who had the guts to walk onto his set, his Tonight Show set, the sacred ground, and call him a dummy, a hockey puck, a big, pale-faced Swede who looked like he slept in a freezer, and the audience would go wild. They loved it because they knew I was the only one allowed to do it. He'd hide from me sometimes. The minute he'd hear my name, he'd duck behind the curtain, and I'd chase him. I'd come out with a fire extinguisher, pretending I was going to put out his lousy jokes. Nobody else did that. Why? Because they were all kissing his backside, hoping for a return invite. Me? I didn't need an invite. I was the invite. We had a relationship built on pure, unadulterated disrespect, and believe me, in show business, that's love. You know why he really loved me? Because I was his release. He had to be the dignified host, the smooth operator, the man who never sweated. But when I came out, he could laugh. A real, gut-busting, shoulder-shaking laugh. He'd bury his face in his cue cards, trying not to ruin his makeup. I set him free. I was his therapy, his nightly dose of reality before he had to go back to being Mr. Perfect. And look, I'm not saying he wasn't perfect. He was the greatest. The absolute greatest. But even the king needs a jester who isn't afraid to tell him his crown is crooked. So here's to Johnny. A wonderful man, a brilliant talent. May he rest in peace. But if he tries to do a show up there, I hope they've got a tight security team, because I'm coming for him with a new set of insults. And I'm still counting characters, you cheap producers. Go home. Actor 2, Jonathan Winters. Well, look at this, Johnny. Look at all these people. They're waiting for a show. And what are they getting? Me. Just me and my little box of marbles. I always told you, Johnny, you ought to get more marbles on the show. Keeps the sound fresh. Asterisk, shifts to an old prospector voice. Well, back in '62, me and old Clem were down in the quarry, and we found a laugh like you wouldn't believe. Sounded like a goose trying to change its oil, but it wasn't as good as Carson's laugh. Nobody had that giggle. It was like a teenager on a roller coaster made of money. And Johnny, oh, he'd just sit there. Mr. Dignity. Handsome fella. That smooth, perfect hair. But the minute I started, he was gone. Poof. He wasn't the host anymore. He was just a kid in the audience, hiding behind the desk, so nobody could see him shaking. That's the beauty of it. He was the most controlled man on television, and I was the one guy who could push all his beautiful little buttons until the electricity blew out of the walls. A little pause, returning to Winter's regular voice, holding a prop like an imaginary cane. I never planned anything, Johnny. Never. You know that. The writers would sweat and fuss over their cue cards, and I'd just walk out there and trust the air. Trust the moment. That's what improv is. It's diving into a pool that might be empty and hoping you sprout wings on the way down. And Johnny was the best catcher. I'd throw him a character, maybe a disgruntled lighthouse keeper named Ethel or a nervous squirrel wearing a tiny hat, and he wouldn't try to top it. He'd just look at me with that perfect Carson look, that look that said, "Oh, God, where is he going now? I love it, but where is he going?" And that look was my license to go anywhere. We played jazz together, Johnny and I. He kept the rhythm, and I just soloed until the horn blew up. That kind of trust, that freedom, you don't get that from a script. You get that from love. Actor 3, Robin Williams. "Oh, Johnny, the king. They want me to talk about the king." Shifts to a British announcer. "Right, settle down, settle down. Here comes the comedic comet, the man who talked faster than a blender full of amphetamines. It's Robin." Back to Williams. And I'd walk out there, and he'd have that look, that classic Carson squint, like, "Okay, kid, you've got 3 minutes. Don't break the desk." And 3 minutes became 30 minutes, because once I got the engine revving, vroom, vroom, vroom. It was like watching a comedic tornado trying to interview a beautiful oak tree. You know what was amazing? The silence. The pure, terrifying, beautiful silence of his control. And I was there to wreck it. I was the wrecking ball. I'd hit him with a Russian accent, then jump to a motivational speaker on too much coffee, then maybe a giraffe trying to mail a letter. Quickly mimes a long neck trying to reach a mailbox. He was the perfect straight man because he was never competing. He was watching. He was the audience we all wanted. If you could make Johnny Carson throw his cue cards in the air and do that marvelous head shaking, "I don't know what to do with this guy" laugh, you'd won the Olympics. You had achieved comedic nirvana. And he'd just let me go? No net. No safety lines. It was pure improvisation in front of millions. He created a space where madness wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. He was the generous heart of the show. He wasn't threatened by my energy. He fed it. He'd just give me one little word, say, "Pickle," and I'd build a 45-second opera about a tragic pickle who couldn't find his family in the supermarket. Shifts voice dramatically. "Oh, where are my brine brothers? They left me for the relish aisle." That was the connection. He gave us the freedom to fly, and if we crashed, he'd just gently hand us a handkerchief. A great man, a true gentleman, and the best laugh in the business. Thank you, Johnny. Actor 4, Bette Midler. "Oh, darling. Oh, Johnny. You just have to love him." Everyone who ever sat on that couch loved him, but I loved him just a little bit more. Because he made me feel like I was singing just for him. Not for the millions watching, but for Johnny Carson, sitting right there at that desk, giving me that little smirk, that little private look that said, "Go on, divine Miss M. Give him hell." And I did. He was the only one in the world who could introduce me and make me feel both nervous and completely safe at the same time. That's a trick, honey. A real, sophisticated trick. You know, there was so much talk about that last show when I sang "One for My Baby." Everyone remembers the moment he got teary. And I'm telling you, that wasn't acting. That wasn't television drama. That was real. Because our connection was real. We weren't just a singer and a host. We were friends who had grown up together on television. He knew my crazy, he knew my heart, and he knew how much I adored him. He was like my big brother, the one who would let you get away with anything because he secretly enjoyed the spectacle. I remember those early appearances, standing by the piano, belting out a tune, and he'd just watch with pure admiration. And then the interviews. Oh, those interviews. He'd ask those simple, perfect questions that would let me run wild, telling stories about my childhood or my ridiculous stage shows, and he'd just be there, the perfect gentleman, the perfect listener. He had that timing, that little nod, that silence, that made everything you said sound brilliant. He was the greatest straight man because he gave you all the room to shine. And when he'd stand up and hug you, and that camera would catch his face, that was the highest compliment you could get in show business. Rest easy, my love. Rest easy. Nobody will ever replace that desk, that laugh, or that beautiful, honest moment when you let me sing you goodbye. Actor 5, Jim Fowler. It's a very different thing, talking about Johnny, than bringing a young alligator out on his set. The tension is about the same, though. I think Johnny loved the tension. He certainly loved the element of the unknown. You see, the other guests, the wonderful comedians, they were predictable chaos. They were stars. But when I walked out with an eagle or a boa constrictor, the show turned into a nature special, and Johnny became the audience's surrogate, slightly terrified, completely fascinated, and desperately trying to maintain his composure while a monkey was trying to steal his coffee mug. That was the joy of our segments. He wasn't just interviewing me. He was having an unplanned wildlife encounter in the middle of late night, and his reactions were pure gold. He would genuinely flinch. That famous laugh, that wonderful, deep, appreciative laugh, would turn into a nervous, high-pitched giggle the minute an animal moved too close to his tie. And I loved that he never refused. He'd look at the producer, his eyes pleading, and then he'd look at me, give that little nod, and let me bring out the next creature, whether it was a large python or a tiny, aggressive owl. He knew those segments were a release for the audience and for himself. It was pure, unscripted reality television before the genre existed. You can't fake a chimp trying to undo Johnny's trousers. And he handled it all with such grace and good humor. He treated every animal and every segment with respect, even while making fantastic jokes. He was the perfect example of a sophisticated gentleman navigating the absolute jungle I brought onto his elegant set. He let the world see that even the king could be startled by a baby lion cub. Thank you, Johnny, for trusting me, for those incredible laughs, and for letting the wild into your wonderful world.